I'm not the kind of person who gets scared. I've traveled through remote areas, talked to strange people, stayed in cheap lodges with broken locks. Nothing ever really shook me. No details, no reports, nothing else. I asked around in nearby towns. Most people just told me to forget about it. Some even walked away without replying. One man said, "Don't talk about that place. Bad things, listen." But what happened in Baravpur still haunts me. It started when I found a single line in an old government file. Baravpur village. Evacuated in 1992 due to unexplained events. He dropped me off a few kilometers from the village and refused to go further. I had to walk the last bit alone. The path was narrow, overgrown, and silent. Completely silent. No birds, no breeze. Like the whole place was holding its breath. But I had to see it for myself. 4 slow rings, then a pause, then 3 more. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Deeply. Like someone had taken a knife to it. There was no temple in sight, no tower, no sign of a bell anywhere. A feeling that there was more to see, more to understand. I hired a driver to take me as close as he was willing to go. When I reached the village, it looked like time had stopped 20 years ago. Houses made of mud and wood, slowly falling apart. Doors hanging off their hinges. Cooking pots still on stoves, now full of dust and I saw a bicycle rusted into the ground, half swallowed by weeds. The top was cracked, and from it hung a large bell. Old writing, carved into the stone, mostly worn away. I couldn't read it, but it felt wrong, like the kind of thing not meant to be understood. Hanging upside down, not moving, human-shaped, but wrong. He was ringing the bell over and over, crying. The village felt even heavier now, like it was holding something in. His voice echoed. I had to ring it. It was gently swinging, even though there was no wind. It looked like people had left in the middle of their day and never came back. And then I heard it, not exactly afraid, more like watched, like something knew I was there. I saw the woman from the photo, the one with the scratched out face, standing at the foot of my bed. She didn't speak, but her mouth kept moving, over and over again, like she was trying to warn me. I raised my flashlight and pointed it toward the ceiling. A bell, not a loud, temple-style bell, more like a deep, dull chime. It echoed strangely, like it was coming from everywhere at once. I tried recording the sound on my phone, but when I played it back, it was just static. I felt strange. I told myself I'd leave before dark, but I found a house that still had a roof and decided to sit down for a while. Inside, everything was coated in dust, but it looked untouched. A child's shoe under the bed, a cracked mirror. On the wall was a photo, a family of 5, a man, woman, and 3 kids. The man looked like a priest. The woman was holding a baby. Her face had been scratched out of the photo. The sun was going down. I should have left, but something kept me there. Then the bell rang again. This time, it was louder, closer. I stepped outside and saw something I swear hadn't been there before. A tall stone tower, standing near the edge of the village. It looked ancient, black stone, covered in vines. I walked toward it, slowly. The base of the tower had strange markings. I stepped closer and looked inside. The bell rope hung down into the tower. There were broken wooden stairs going up. For just a moment, I saw something, a figure. The flashlight flickered, and when it came back on, the shape was gone. I didn't wait to check again. I turned around and walked quickly back to the house. That night, I didn't sleep well. I had strange dreams. I also dreamed of the priest. When I woke up, it was completely silent. The bell had stopped. I packed up my things, ready to leave. That's when I noticed something that stopped me cold. The family photo, the one I had seen on the wall. It was no longer there. It was now lying on top of my backpack. I never touched it. I stared at the photo for a long time. It was the same one. The family of 5, the man in priest robes, the 3 kids, the woman with her face scratched out. But now it was folded neatly and sitting right on top of my bag. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even walked near that wall since I first saw it. More out of instinct than anything. I don't know why. Maybe part of me didn't want to leave it behind. I felt a chill run through my whole body. I picked up the photo and put it in my notebook. As soon as I stepped outside, I knew something had changed. The air felt heavier. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt full, like it was hiding something. And the sky, it looked darker than it should have, like the sun was being smothered by something that wasn't clouds. I didn't want to stay any longer. But no, there was a clear figure, a man, dressed in priest robes, facing away from me. I walked quickly out of the village, trying not to look at the tower as I passed. But the bell rang again, deep and heavy, and I stopped without meaning to. That sound didn't just echo in my ears. It echoed inside my chest, my head, my bones. I turned around, slowly, and looked at the tower one last time. There was someone standing at the top. At first I thought maybe it was the wind blowing through vines or shadows playing tricks. He was holding the rope, and then he rang the bell again. And again, my knees buckled. My vision blurred for a second, like the world was flickering in and out. I had to look away, and again, each time it rang, I felt weaker. When I opened my eyes again, the tower was empty. There was no man. I showed him the photo I had taken from the house. No bell. He didn't answer. I tried 3 more times. Nothing. This was a long time ago. Maybe the 80s? People used to say he tried to seal something inside Baravpa. Something evil. But the ritual went wrong. No tower. It was just open ground. But I swear, I saw it. I heard it. It was real. As long as it rings, the thing they trapped stays locked inside. But it's not supposed to be rung by just anyone. I ran the rest of the way back to the road. When I got to where the driver had dropped me off, I called him. I ended up walking another 6 kilometers until I found someone on a motorbike who gave me a lift back to town. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bell sound kept echoing in my head. The next day, I went to a local historian who had helped me before on another story. He looked at it carefully. Then he pointed to the man in the picture. The priest. I've seen this man before. He said he was not a temple priest, a kind of spiritual healer. I asked him what happened. He said, no one really knows. But after that, the whole village left. Some say the bell is a kind of seal. The priest would ring the bell over and over, screaming. I didn't want to open it. I didn't tell him about the tower I saw. I didn't mention the dreams. I left town the next morning and flew home. For a few weeks, things were fine. But then I started hearing it again. Not all the time. Just late at night. I'd be lying in bed, almost asleep, and I'd hear it. Faint, far away. I tried to throw the photo away, but somehow, it came back. Dung, dung. Sometimes it came from outside my window. Sometimes from inside my house. The dreams came back. The woman from the photo would stand in corners, whispering in a voice I couldn't hear. And then one night, I woke up and found the photo lying on my chest. I had kept it in a drawer, locked, inside a folder. Now it was folded neatly, just like before. I don't know what's happening to me. I haven't told anyone else. I moved to a new apartment. Every time I try to forget Baravpa, I hear the bell again, and it's getting louder. If you ever come across a village that's not on any map, a village where people avoid even saying its name, do yourself a favor. Don't go looking for it. And if you hear a bell ringing for no reason, don't follow it. Because once you've heard the bell of Baravpa, it never really stops. I spent 2 weeks in Iceland in the winter of 2017. I'd just gone through a breakup, and I needed space, the kind of space you can only get in a country where the sun barely rises, and the landscape looks like another planet. I booked a cheap cottage on the northern coast, far from near a town most locals hadn't even heard of. My rental car had no signal for over an hour. I remember thinking, if I crash here, nobody will find me until spring. The name was Ruffenskar, a small, quiet fishing village surrounded by mountains and snow-covered cliffs. The sky was dark blue, almost black, and the whole village was covered in snow. About 20 houses, 1 dock, and a small church. But something about the village felt of it. I didn't go as a tourist. I went to get away from people. Getting there wasn't easy. The last leg of the journey was a narrow, icy road, winding between rocks and frozen lakes. The village was still asleep, quiet, except for the wind. I set up my tripod and started shooting. When I finally reached Hrafnskar, the sun was already down. Even though it was just 3 p.m., I checked into the cottage, a 1-bedroom cabin with a wood stove and no TV. Perfect. I wasn't planning to explore much. I brought books, warm clothes, and a camera to take some moody landscape shots. Not wrong, just watched. Empty. When I looked again, she was gone. Just like that. No footsteps in the snow. No sound. Nothing. I noticed the first strange thing on my second day. I had gone out early to take photos of the cliffs. His hands were by his sides, like he was waiting for something. That's when I saw someone standing at the edge of the dock. It was a woman, long dark coat, bare hands, no gloves, just standing there, facing the ocean. Her back was to me, slow, steady steps. I took a few photos, then turned to adjust my lens. I walked to the dock to make sure. I looked around, checked behind the boats. I told myself it was the weather messing with my head, but that night, something else happened. I was in bed reading when I heard a sound outside the cottage. It was soft, like footsteps in snow. I got up, opened the curtain, and looked out. Only 3 people were there, 2 old fishermen and a middle-aged woman behind the counter. I tried asking about the man I saw, but they didn't answer. They just looked at me for a long time. Then one of them said, in broken English, "People in Raffenskar do not walk at night. They come out when the wind dies. The ones who walk the wrong way, don't speak to them. Don't answer them." There was a man standing in the middle of the path, not walking, just standing there, facing away from the cottage. I couldn't see his face, only the back of his head. He wore a thick coat and a fishing hat. Then, slowly, he started to walk, but not forward. He was walking backward, perfectly, without turning his head, or waiting. I didn't dare look outside. He moved slowly, 1 step at a time, backwards into the dark, until I couldn't see him anymore. I waited a minute or 2, heart pounding, then opened the door and stepped outside. There were no footprints in the snow. I thought about leaving the next day, but curiosity is a tricky thing. Fear pushes you back. Curiosity pulls you forward, and somehow, curiosity always wins with me. The next morning, I went into the village cafe. I asked why. He didn't speak again. The woman at the counter said quietly, "No one." I asked who she meant. She said nothing more. I left the cafe feeling like I had walked into a dream I didn't understand. That night, the wind stopped completely. Around midnight, I heard the sound again, footsteps outside the cabin. This time, more than one set. I stayed in bed, holding my breath. The steps moved around the cabin, slow and careful, like people pacing. Then I heard something that made my stomach twist. 3 knocks on the window. Slow. Ivana didn't move, didn't speak. Then a voice, a man's voice, low and calm. He said my name, just once. I hadn't told anyone my name in that village. I stayed frozen in bed for what felt like hours. Eventually, I fell asleep without meaning to. In the morning, I went outside. No footprints, just a perfect sheet of white snow, untouched in every direction. I thought I was losing my mind. Everything looked normal in the daylight. The sky was pale, the village was quiet, and the snow looked untouched, like it had never been walked on. But I knew what I'd heard the night before. The voice, the knock, my name. I packed my things and decided I would leave the next morning, even if I had to drive through a snowstorm. That afternoon, I went for one last walk to clear my head. I brought my camera again, even though I didn't feel like taking photos anymore. I walked past the church, past the frozen lake behind it, and into the woods just beyond. In the center stood a wooden pole with bits of torn cloth tied to it, faded by weather and time. It didn't look like a grave. It looked older, like something ceremonial. There, tucked between the trees, I found something strange, an old stone wall, short, broken in places, surrounding a sunken clearing. I took one picture and turned to leave. Behind me, I heard snow crunching. I spun around. Nothing there. This time, I saw them. Figures between the trees. I walked faster, back toward the path. More footsteps. Men and women, slowly stepping backward between the trees. Not turning, not speaking. But they weren't walking toward me. They were walking backward. I saw his eyes. They were open wide, but they didn't blink. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. At least 5 of them. I stood frozen, not sure if I should run or stay completely still. One of them, a man in a heavy coat, passed just a few meters in front of me. Then they were gone, just like that, back into the trees. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat near the fireplace, with every light in the cottage turned on. Around 1 a.m., the wind stopped again. And then, once more, I heard footsteps outside. This time, I didn't hide. I picked up my phone and started recording. I walked to the window and looked out. There were 3 of them, standing in a perfect line outside the cottage, backs to me, not moving. After a few seconds, one of them started walking backward, toward the front door. He stopped right in front of it, and knocked. 3 slow knocks. Then he said it again, my name, clearly, calmly, but nothing followed me. No knocks, no footsteps. I backed away. A woman, wearing a long coat, facing away from the camera. The voice came again, this time from behind the cottage. Another voice, whispering my name from the other side of the wall, and another, from the roof. He said it didn't look edited, and that the file hadn't been changed since the day I took it. They were surrounding me, but I still hadn't seen their faces, and I think that's why I was still alive. In the morning, I packed my things in silence and left without looking back. I drove 5 hours straight, barely stopping. Once I reached the city, I booked a hotel and stayed there for the rest of my trip. A kind of high-frequency hum, almost like interference, but when he slowed it down, it wasn't noise. I didn't sleep well. When I got back home, I tried to forget, but a week later, I checked the photos on my camera. Most of them were normal, but the one I took in the woods, the one of the stone wall, had changed. I live in a city with bright lights and no snow. I haven't gone anywhere near the north since then. In the center of the photo, where there had been nothing before, there was now a figure. She was standing still, walking backward. I showed the photo to a friend who works in digital forensics. He also said something else. Their steps too careful, their path slightly reversed. The audio I recorded that night, when I captured the knock and the voice, had a strange signal in it. It was speech, dozens of voices, layered over each other, all saying the same word. Stay. It's been years now, but every so often I'll hear something that makes me freeze, and knock at my door when no one's outside. A voice calling my name in the middle of the night. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, I'll pass someone on the street who's walking in a way that's just a little off, their eyes too wide. I never look back. And if you're ever in Iceland, and someone offers to take you to a small fishing village that isn't on the map, do yourself a favor. Say no. Because they walk backward for a reason, and once you see them, they never really let you go. I was in Chile on a documentary trip in 2019, hiking the less traveled stretches of the Andes, not for any big production, just personal work. I had this idea to record the voices and stories of people living in the most isolated mountain villages, before those places disappeared forever. One of the guides I met in Santiago mentioned a village called El Bosque, which means the forest. He didn't want to talk about it at first, said it was quiet but strange. When I pushed him, he said only one thing that stuck with me. If you don't light more than one lantern at night, ever. At the time, I thought it was folklore, some mountain superstition. It took me nearly 2 days of hiking to reach the village. I wrote it down in my journal and moved on. A few weeks later, I found the trail leading to El Bosque. He looked at my backpack and camera, then simply said, "You shouldn't be here after dark." No road signs, no paved path, just an old mule track that weaved through steep pine forest. There were no cars, no visible power lines, and hardly any people out during the day. El Bosque was small, maybe 15 or 20 houses, all made of dark wood, with steep roofs and fog-stained windows. Everything looked stuck in time. The only person who approached me was an old man carrying firewood. I asked him why. He looked up at the hills around the village and replied, "There are more of them than us now." When I asked what he meant, he shook his head and walked away. I stayed in an abandoned barn just outside the village. It was dry, clean enough, and far from the main path. That first night, I lit one of my camping lanterns and set it on the floor while I unpacked. Then I saw something strange. Across the forest, in the dark, maybe 200 meters away, I saw another light, small, faint, like a lantern. At first I thought it might be someone else camping, but it didn't move. 5, 6, maybe more, all unmoving, all at the exact same brightness as mine. It just hovered there. I turned my light off, out of curiosity. The distant light went out. I asked if anyone knew the history of this place, or if I could speak to someone in charge. I turned mine back on. So did it. I stared for a long time, then finally stepped outside to get a better look. That's when I noticed something even stranger. There were several lights, now small flickers, spread out through the trees. I shut my lantern off and rushed back inside, closing the door behind me. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, I went back into the village. I tried to speak to a woman selling dried herbs near her doorstep. She wouldn't look at me. Finally, she said, "Talk to Father S." She pointed toward the old church. It wasn't much more than a wooden chapel, but it looked older than anything else in the village. How to walk like us, how to move like us. But the eyes, they always get the eyes wrong. I found Father Esteban sitting on a bench, staring at the trees like he was waiting for something. I told him I was documenting remote cultures. He nodded and said softly, "We used to have a culture." I asked what happened. He said, "They come for the lights. That's what happened." I asked him what they meant. His hands trembled as he lit a candle in a glass jar. If more than one flame burns at night, they see it, they come to match it, copy it. That's how they learn. Where we are, I was confused. I asked if he was talking about spirits. He shook his head. No, something older, something that was never human. That night, I decided to test the story, not to mock it, just to see. I walked up the hill behind my barn and lit 2 lanterns this time. I placed one on the path and held the other. It didn't take long. Within 5 minutes, I saw 2 lights appear in the forest, then 4, then 6. I turned off one of my lanterns. The lights stayed, but now they were moving. I backed down the hill slowly, keeping my eyes on the lights. They were coming through the forest now, slowly but steadily, like lanterns swinging from invisible hands. But they didn't flicker like real fire. They glowed with a weird stillness, steady and pale, almost like copies of light. I turned and walked back to the barn, but the woods were so quiet I could hear every step I made, crunching through snow and leaves. No wind, no birds, just me and whatever was moving out there. Once inside, I locked the door and put my lantern on the floor. But even with the wood shut tight and the light off, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. And then it knocked. Just one knock, followed by another, and another, from the back wall. I froze. It was impossible. No one could be behind that wall. It was a sealed timber panel, and beyond that was a slope of frozen dirt. Then the knock came again, but this time, from the roof. I grabbed my backpack and waited, silent. The knocks moved again, this time to the door, and then a voice, not loud, not angry, just quiet, calm. It said, "Lantern." "That's it, Landon." I didn't respond. I didn't move. After about a minute, the voice repeated, closer now. But this time, it sounded like my own voice. Same tone, same rhythm, just slightly off. "Lantern," it said again. Then silence. No more footsteps. No more knocks. Just total, suffocating stillness. I stayed awake until dawn, clutching a pocket knife I knew wouldn't help. As soon as the sun came up, I ran back to the village. I found Father Esteban outside the church, already waiting. He looked at me with tired eyes and said, "They noticed you." I asked him what I should do. He said, "You need to leave before sunset, but not the way you came in." I told him that was the only way I knew, the old mule path. He shook his head. "They'll be waiting for you there. They mimic habit, not even one. They can see through false fire pattern. You need to walk a different way." Through the quarry, he pointed toward the far end of the village, where an old path wound through the rock and pine. Then he said, "No light." I packed what little I had, thanked him, and left that afternoon. The quarry path was steep and narrow, cutting between cliffs and frozen creek beds. The sun was setting fast, casting long shadows over the rocks. I made it about a mile out when I realized I was no longer alone. I didn't hear anything at first, just that sensation, the kind that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. I turned and saw a figure standing between the trees. It held a lantern, the same size as mine, the same brightness. Then another appeared, and another. They weren't walking, they were just appearing, standing still, each one holding the exact same light I had used the night before, one after another. Some were close, others far. I turned off my flashlight. They didn't disappear, they didn't move, just stood there, glowing faintly in the dark. I turned and walked faster. No sound, no voices, but every few steps, I'd glance back and see them again. Closer then. Ahead of me something even worse. Another lantern. In front of me, held by someone facing away from me, standing in the middle of the path. Same build as me, same backpack, same everything. It was me, or something wearing me. It didn't move. I stood there frozen, unsure what to do. Then it slowly lifted its arm and turned its head halfway. I didn't stay to see more. I climbed off the path and scrambled down the ridge through ice and stone. I fell twice, cut my hand, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away from the trail. I didn't stop moving until I saw headlights. A logging truck was coming around the bend, heading toward the highway. I jumped in front of it, waving both arms. The driver cursed in Spanish and stopped just in time. I didn't explain much, just begged for a ride out of the valley. He looked at me strangely, then asked where I'd come from. I said, El Bosque. His face changed. He didn't speak again the whole drive. That was nearly 6 years ago. I never released the footage. I deleted the photos, but I kept the recording, the one from the barn, with the knock and the voice. Sometimes I play it back, just to remind myself it happened. There's one part I never noticed before. At the very end, under the sound of the knock, there's another voice, but no one's been able to find it on a map. You can only hear it with headphones. It whispers, almost gently, "There is no more night where we are." I've spoken to other travelers since then, backpackers, climbers, solo hikers. Some of them have heard of El Bosque. I once tried to go back, not to stay, just to see it again, but the path was gone, like the forest had swallowed it. I don't think El Bosque exists in the same way anymore. Or maybe it's still there, waiting for the next light to appear in the trees. Either way, if you ever find yourself in the Andes and someone tells you not to light more than one lantern at night, listen, because there's something in those woods, and it only knows how to come when it sees you first.